Welcome back, everybody. Let's start talking about some of the different things that religion would have us believe, that would what we call truth. And we'll start talking about concepts of ultimate being. And part of this lecture will be a little bit of history and how religion formed step by step, which is a really fascinating and interesting process. In case you're curious where this information comes from, a lot of it comes from scientists and researchers, especially archaeologists and anthropologists, who get out there and do a lot of field work, a lot of digging and discovering artifacts and get puzzle pieces and then start to put the puzzle pieces together. On this slide, we see some different beautiful images from the physical world. Now, religion actually begins here, in that way back in the day, people would look at certain parts of the landscape, the physical world, and it would inspire within them awe, pleasure, as well as threat. So awe, pleasure, and threat. It's kind of a mixture of these different things being woven together. And that led to what we today recognize as a spiritual feeling. So in other words, for example, in the top image, that's the Grand Canyon. I don't know if you've ever seen the Grand Canyon. I have, and it is simply amazing. And when I saw it, I was in graduate school, saw it with my family, even though we're all old, all adults. And the first time that we saw the Grand Canyon, we had parked the car, and we all, rambled out of the car, and we went to an overlook region to where you could see the vast panorama, get away from the trees that were blocking the view. And an amazing thing happened as we were all looking at the Grand Canyon. No one was talking. It was just completely quiet except for two sounds. The first sound was the of people taking pictures. Yes, this was back before people took pictures with their telephones. And the other sound was the wind. You could hear the wind blowing in our ears. And then a strange thing started to happen to my eyes. They started to tear up, and I started to, each time I blinked, it felt like a tear was going to come down. And I thought, boy, this is really weird, just how this is happening, looking at, this Grand Canyon, literally grand. It was amazing. It was awesome. It was pleasurable, but at the same time, it was threatening. Now, you might be wondering, how could you be threatened by that, Mr. K? Well, I recognized that here was something that had been created into this physical world, and it's so big, it's so immense. There's no way for one person to do that. There's no way for, a million people to do this. There's just no way. It's the awakening within me, the feeling that there's something bigger than me that could squash me like a bug if it wanted to. I know you're probably thinking, it's true. So then I wanted to turn to my dad, and it was like, wow, look at this, Dad. So I turned to my dad, and my dad had silent tears running down his face. He was feeling the same thing I was, and I was like, oh my goodness. So I turned to look at some of the other tourists, dozens and dozens of people, and most of them were crying, silent tears just running down their faces. Wow. That's that feeling. Now the other images we see here were the auroras Borealis, and then Mount Everest. Now today we know what the northern lights, how they're formed, the magnetic fields and the spinning of the Earth on its axis and the interaction of magnetic ions in the atmosphere and all that science, blah, 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 blah. But if we think back, way back in the day, people before science, they would see these things and they would, wow, look at that. And what would they feel? Awe, pleasure, and threat. Why? Because human beings do these things. Like the mountains, human beings can't make a mountain. There's something bigger than us that could squash us like a bug if it wanted to. So, throughout human history, nature has inspired this feeling. And we call this numinous. 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 So what is the numinous? That's that spiritual feeling that is awakened within us by parts of nature that inspire awe, pleasure, and threat. Numinous. Numinous. And you're thinking, wow, I spelled it more than once, must be on the test. And you're right. The numinous. So, it begins with the numinous. So here's a quote here. Something we might admit is great and wonderful to our senses, but there is something beyond our senses. This feeling then hints at something which is above nature, literally that which is supernatural. So what that means is that when we encounter these different parts of the physical world, or like in this picture here, this is from the Hubble Space Telescope, which is able to take pictures of what's going on in deep space, the formation of stars, which we see here, this interstellar gas condensing and forming stars. Beautiful, beautiful pictures. We realize that literally is above nature, that there is a greatness associated with the numinous that is beyond our conceiving. In other words, our poor little human brains cannot really explain things. We try to, but we really cannot. It's beyond our conception. Mysterium, mystery. Its power is daunting. In other words, tremendous. And its glory is attractive. In other words, these are things that we cannot explain. Their power is frightening to us. And yet its glory, we're drawn to it. We want to be part and parcel of this. And this something, this supernatural aspect, while it's beyond our ultimate explanation, is absolute. It's ultimate. And it is holy. Oh, and this is, if you're not excited by this, then you're really not excited by religion. The fact that there are things that are beyond our explanation, we can't explain. That there's nothing greater than, nothing beyond that. It's absolute, it's ultimate, and it's holy. And this is something that I find just tremendously, tremendously exciting about our study of religion. And we will continue in the next lecture.